On this episode of Mad Ginger Customs, we are finally going to get that 1964 F100 driving under its own power, and we're going to get her out of the garage. Let's go. Not remembering a single thing that I recorded so far, because of which it may be nothing. I did some wiring, and I'm trying to save you guys from having to watch me do wiring. Everyone and their mother hates that. So what I did was this. Instead of using this big honking thing and putting it up here, I decided I'm going to put the fuse, the 125 fuse for the steering, Mustang electric steering rack. The one relay is for the steering rack, and the other relay is for the cooling fans in the radiator. The HEI does not need to be on a relay, and it shouldn't be, as far as I know. Everything is fused. I put inline fuses on everything. The steering rack is a 5 amp. The power for the steering rack is a 125 per Ford. And the cooling and the choke power is fused as well. Just a little extra protection on that. I did have to run this honking bunch of cabling because this truck really has no power anywhere because of its age. But this is all you need. Got a ground hooked up to the chassis here. And then we're grounded from the alternator bracket down to the frame. And then the body, I made another one over here. It goes from the intake to the chassis there, or to the body. Kind of just adding extras, you know, without giving you the, oh, surprise, I don't know if it runs. Of course, I just flicked it. And then it turned over. So I'm like, you know what? I wonder if it would pump fuel. The fuel it pumped, weird color. It's like orange. I don't necessarily know how good that gas is, but it's been in there for about 1,000 years, so it did run. The truck, as soon as I pumped fuel to it, it literally was like, boom, and I just shut it off because, see, the transmission lines are not hooked up. So we got tranny fluid. Luckily, I shut it off immediately so the transmission didn't pump out, which is nice. So what we're doing now is I am very concerned, and not concerned, I don't mean concerned. I don't like the fact that this uses a rod linkage. I have that in my 66, I'm not a fan. And this has a 700R4, which, for those of you not paying attention, this is just a Chevy small block out of a pickup and a 700R4 out of a C-Series pickup. That uses what's called a throttle valve cable, not a kickdown cable. So it has to be set properly to give you the proper pressure in your transmission. This is the only wire currently not hooked up that we need. And this is going to power those fans. So we're going to ground one side. These fans are run off of this thermal switch, which I believe it's like a 180 on, 175 off. I believe it's a 160 thermostat, so it should modulate the fans. I'm not really sure that combination of things is going to be good. Whatever, we can always change the thermostat. That's easy. The only thing I screwed up, and I'm going to admit this to you guys, is when I went to grab a hold of the distributor and I was putting the wires back on, I did not realize that I turned it. So we're going to have to retime it again. I timed it when it was on the engine stand, showing how useful the engine, the run stand was, but I screwed that up. And we are also going to work on probably getting the holes patched up in the firewall for Jess, because she doesn't want anything kind of coming through. And I got a grommet that may fit right there. I just bought it at the hardware store. Because Jess she goes, the sink's leaking. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, the swivel on the neck on the faucets, you got to go buy a new faucet. I'm like, I'm not buying a new faucet. I'm just going to fix what we have. So I did that. And while I was there, I'm like, ooh, that grommet looks like the right size, just from memory. Everything's fine. I'm sure it'll fit. That might work. I don't believe this is meant for an Edelbrocken, because the throttle shaft, like where it moves, hits this. I'm going to show you. So you put this thing on here. Now this clears everything else better, and I like that it has return springs. But it was hitting right here. It still kind of is. Yeah, just a little bit more. Do you guys see that in there? A slight bit more doctoring was needed here. Let me take it off and show you. I like this. I do like this style of bracket. You just had to give it a little bit more notch because as it swings up, the outer piece here was just about to touch, and you know, with heat and things moving around, I don't think it would ever hit, but I clearanced it anyway. So now it comes up right through. Now I can lock it down. Feel better about that. I know, you're gonna say, Dave, just buy the right one. No, I already bought 2 of these. This one would have worked, but I like the throttle return on this one, so we're just gonna make this one work. So I used the bracket that came with this one. I just drilled the holes out bigger, and then all we gotta do is put a throttle cable on, and the thing fits right in. Right there, boom, clears everything. My kickdown TV cable is gonna line right up. We'll have to set that later, obviously. And we're gonna have to we can't bolt this down yet because I don't know what this throttle cable is gonna look like once we get a pedal in here. Next on the agenda, which I forgot to do in the last video, is gotta have some type of retainer for the top of this radiator. So, you know, not that you guys gotta see me make this, just a little piece of 18 gauge, little extra pinch over 90, kind of center it, and that's it. A couple stainless steel screws on each side. That's it. She's mint. This thing is literally probably as strong as the grill is, even though it is made in China. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some that rubber right here, any of the touch points. That way we're not rubbing on the sides. We've got plenty of room, and I'll run it across the bottom, and I'll rub it into the brackets, or I'll run it in the brackets. Painted my little bracket I made for here. Hit that thing with some paint. That's drying. I'm going to use weather strip adhesive for that roll of rubber stripping. I climbed underneath this thing, jacked it up a little higher, climbed underneath it, affixed the fuel line, the brake line, and the harness all along the frame rail so it's nice and sturdy, so it doesn't bounce around and it doesn't chafe. I have another list. Every time I bring a list in, Jess is like, the list looks longer than it did when you started. It always is. So, unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at. This stuff, I don't know if you guys have seen this stuff. This is just butyl sealant. I bought this for, I don't remember why, but it's basically just like a ribbon sealer, but it's really good for sealing up firewall holes. You can kind of knead it in your hands and fill in the holes. So like if there's a grommet, you can see a grommet right there, you can kind of press and prod it, you know, and just push it into the grommet to seal it up. Jess will not tolerate the wind blowing on her because she's tiny. Is this hazy? It might be. It's actually like really, it's like 40, but it's rainy, and it's everything's kind of wet. I got the sway bar just kind of in here. It does clear the steering if you mount it, like mount it up like this. It doesn't touch anything. So I think that's going to be just fine because that should not, the elevation should never change on that. So I gotta basically just pin it up and then mark it and drill some holes, and that's done. And while we got up in the air, we'll change the oil real quick because I think I dinged the oil filter because the bottom of it's a little wet, and it wasn't when I had it on the run stand. So I think I might have just a little tiny tapperson. My local hardware store is awesome. I think I've said it in past videos. Guys, support your local hardware stores. You know, those little guys, like the little Main Street guys, that's the guys you want to support. Not those big box stores. They're gonna have all the weird hardware, all the special hardware. You know, you end up at Home Depot or wherever the hell you are, and you're like, I don't know why they don't have this, and I don't know why all the other places are out of business. Well, I know why they're out of business. Am I close? Am I anywhere near it? I am. Hey! Due to the fact that we know that this motor runs, because we ran on the engine stand, it didn't make any funny noises. Transmission is still a wild card, may or may not shift, but you know, we splurged and got the VR1. That's got zinc in it for flat tappet cams, which obviously this is. I got a new oil cap because, you know, sometimes you got to treat your girl right. Oh, she's thick. She's a thick girl. Probably should get a funnel. Let's get a funnel. Thank goodness these are not crazy tight. We want to get this rod out of here. And that's attached to the throttle assembly in the truck. What we have here is the finest slash cheapest. It's not the cheapest actually, but I'm assuming this is just a Chinese import pedal. It is splined, so you can adjust how far the throw rod would be. The issue is going to be how far can this be mounted versus how much throw it'll have on the floor in there. Only every time try to take a bolt out of this truck, we're gonna cut it out. This has a throttle stop right there. I don't know if you guys can see that because I haven't put light in here yet. This thing obstructs everything, and I tried to take the nut and back it off, and it is not coming. So I'm not asking it again. I'm just gonna cut it so it snaps the perimeter nut ring off of it, and then I can push it through. More holes to patch, but this thing's gonna need a floor. Jess and I talked about that earlier, so all the vinyl's gonna come out of it, and we really gotta get a good look at it because those cab mounts are bad, and I'm not gonna put a cab mount on an old floor. We'll just have to get some couple pans and a couple mounts and section them the best we can. I'm gonna cut this out, come back to you. Lost the camera for a little bit there. I can already tell that this coming through the firewall is going to be a problem because there's very limited throw on that lever right here, up here. So when this thing comes up, it's going to hit, and there's just not, I mean, I don't think there's going to be enough pull. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to trim this down to make it, you know, as short as possible. These universal throttle cable kits, you cut them, guys. Don't, you know, don't be scared to cut them. These things, they used to be like, you can only get like a low car one before, and they were really expensive. These things on Amazon are fairly inexpensive now. Just be sure if you are going to trim this down, like I'm going to do, I'm going to show you, you tape it up real good with a piece of electrical tape, and you cut in the tape, because you will fray the end, and then you'll never get it. It'll just come apart, and you're going to cry the blues. And you're going to be like, Dave, you didn't tell me. And I'm going to say, I certainly did tell you. I told you, and you didn't listen. You're like my kids. Just kidding. You guys are awesome. We can have as short a cable as possible. You don't want this thing to be snaking all around. It adds resistance to the cable, and you're going to push the cable, and you're like, man, there's so much resistance. I had a throttle valve cable on the AOD in the Blue 66, and I kind of like looped the cable because it was long, and I'm like, I'm not going to cut it. That's stupid. Take the extra 5 seconds and cut it and put it back together correctly, because you'll thank me for doing that. After you put your tape on, you know, put it back in and measure it again, and then realize that you actually didn't want to cut it here, you wanted to cut it here. So cooler heads have prevailed. That's it. Oh, it's stinky. I like it. So now you can still get your ferrule over the end of that, you know. Another thing you may realize is that your two, you know, really high-end Chinese components don't work with each other, so you gotta thin this out. I'm gonna go do that with a flap wheel. With all budget Chinese items, I had to modify this to even work the way it came. When you tighten down both sides, it tightened down so tight against these bushings, it wouldn't move. So I just took them on the belt sander, and I just kind of knocked the shoulders off, and now they're clearanced. There is still a little bit of play in the splines, but I don't necessarily think that'll make a difference. I'm going to put grease in this, and I'm going to put Loctite on these screws because they basically just fall right out. Solid work, China.
Let's say China. China. China.
I was a little frustrated with this. Jess came out to give me a hand because I couldn't get the bolts through the firewall. This is a hodgepodge of like 10 different throttle cable setups. But go ahead, run it.
To the floor?
Well, you just, you know.
Can you go down?
Yeah, all the way. It opens the secondaries. It's okay. Now she's like, when you're in the primaries, it's pretty decent, but when you got to really get into the secondaries, she's like, there is resistance, and she has to put effort into the pedal.
Come off the seat.
Well, the seat's pushed back because it's for me.
When I go down to the ground, I gotta like get up in the seat.
Well, you're too short, though. The seat will be forward.
True.
How's everything else? Is it in a decent enough spot?
Yeah, I mean, that's where...
Okay. I think I'm going to lower
That
the
way down.
brake pedal, too, because the brake pedal's really high. Oh, you want to change the steering wheel, too?
Did you not get...
Oh, I mean, I got one, but you know, look, this is
wanna
Mad
test
Ginger
it
Customs.
first?
I don't have enough time in these episodes.
Oh, I thought... Oh, you meant today or this weekend. I thought you meant eventually.
Well, I mean, we could. We're not going to drive it today because it's horrible out. Maybe tomorrow will be nicer. I could just do it in the morning, just because it won't take 2 seconds, but to change the steering wheel. How does it feel to almost be driving this?
Good.
Okay. My life. Jess and I are in a hurry to get to a hockey game. So we just stuffed the front end on. You guys have watched us do this 100 times. We struggle immensely with this.
Every time.
As much with almost everything I've encountered with this. I gotta find a better way to run the transmission lines. I had them run underneath here, but I can't swoop them back up and over. I might pull them back to the battery end and run them along the inside here. For now, I'm probably just gonna shorten them. But, I mean, I don't even know if this transmission works. Maybe that's the first thing we should do is, does it move? Also, my whole theory of I will make radiator hoses like square body equivalent, it's not gonna work either because of the distance. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do for hoses if I already cut this significantly. I don't know if I can make it work. Another auto parts store trip for flexi hoses. Ugh. Anyway, let me see if I can get one of these to fit. Not according to plan. Works regardless. Who cares? The wind outside is absolutely brutal. I've had the camera off. You can barely hear in here. It's a lull right now. So, anywho, yellow is getting triggered from the relay from this thermal switch. Fans are grounded. The relay is grounding through the thermal switch. And then we're just powering the power steering with the other relay. That's the main fuse for that. It's 125 amp. And I don't know what else I could explain to you, but I'm going to try to snug down the distributor because it's really, really loose. And I think we're going to try to fire it up. I'm going to put some gas in it because the gas in it looks like varnish. I'll pour antifreeze in this and it'll just like pour out the bottom probably. Oh yeah, Prestone. It was the cheapest, I promise. It was the cheapest they had at Advance. So we'll throw a gallon in it, then we'll go grab some water and mix her up. The coil's broken in the radiator. This is all going into the transmission. Joke's on me. That's not funny. No massive leaks currently. GoPro's having a problem with the cold. Shocking, I know. They always do. Short of a bunch of wire loom and maybe some cable management. I guess, try it. We're gonna need our meter to make sure we're charging. I mean, not off the rip. Let's just try to get it to idle. And hopefully it doesn't go through the garage and kill me. But, all right, test number 1. Here we go. I'm not even sure why I'm nervous. This did run on the engine stand. Still nervous. This transmission's gonna puke all over the floor. I guess we're just gonna try it. I gave it a couple pumps. I made sure it's in park. Here we go. Not sure why it died, but it died. Well, I don't see a bloodbath of transmission fluid. I do hear the collectors rattling, which I originally thought was like something rubbing, but it's definitely the collector flanges rattling. The headers are leaking like a sieve. I knew these gaskets would suck. I can hear them ticking away. I'm gonna buy some new ones. Those are horrible. That is awful. I can hear that. GM one wire, that's charging. The transmission is super low still with it running. I did pop it in reverse and just whack, you know, it didn't spin or anything. I just whacked it and it did try to move. So fingers crossed that this is gonna, transmission's gonna be good. All in, this engine was $300 bucks and the transmission was, I think I paid the gentleman 500, no. Yeah, maybe 500 bucks for it because he was very adamant that it only had 36,000 miles on it since he bought a rebuild. You know, it's a Jasper rebuild. I don't know how much stock you can put in that, but he was adamant that it was a good transmission and it shifted fine, and the only reason that he took the transmission out of his truck was because he went to rebuild his 305. He dropped one of the pistons, broke the skirt, and said, screw it, I'm not going to bother with the truck. He got rid of the truck, but he pulled the transmission because he is a car guy, and he's like, I'm going to throw it on the shelf because at some point I'm going to use it. He says that he does mostly air-cooled and British stuff, and he's like, I'm never really going to get to it. So here we are with this transmission. I don't see any massive leaks. That's good. We're going to try to swap this steering wheel out real quick. It's just too big. I mean, not just for me, even for Jess. Jess is tiny. I don't know how they manage these vehicles like this. We do have power steering now, thanks to the Mustang steering rack. I did check it. Oh, I gotta lock this back down too. Well, looks like we're pulling. Let me get a puller. This does not fit in here. And I don't want it to blow out of my face. It's definitely not the right threads. Sometimes you can beat on them a little bit and they'll loosen up. Just give it a, tighten it up. Looks like it's just yanking right out of there, unfortunately. Not good. Hey, we got it. Well, that was good. I didn't even mess up the shaft. It's a pretty safe bet to assume this will never have a horn, ever. I have 15 different adapters going to 10 different things. I can't even see the top anymore. I guess it's here. I mean, something like that. I did put the pin in it for the turn signal cancel, even though I don't believe it's going to work, but whatever. You think Jess cares? She doesn't care. I could have sworn it said top right here. I don't know, it's pulling in. I mean, that's quite a bit of engagement. I feel all right about that. Gotta put the wheel on it to have something to hold on to. But I mean, hell, that's okay. That's a lot of thread. I think I can get more on it. I just gotta, you know, have this in there. This is a whole lot of fail. The button doesn't fit because the nut's there for the steering. I'm not gonna use any of this. We're gonna take this all off. I'm not gonna use this. For now, we'll just leave it. I'm gonna buy Jess whatever steering wheel she wants. And because it's also too close to the turn signal stalk, now we could just kind of bend it out of the way if we needed to. I don't want to do that. I want to get her the right wheel. This wheel's too small anyway. I don't like it. I don't like any of this. So we're gonna just use it on something else. We'll put it on the shelf. And I mean, for now, you know, for now it'll work. Well, I guess here we go. It moves under its own power. See if we can get the tarp off without ripping it off. Timing's all messed up. We know that though. Oh man, the exhaust leaks so bad. But it's out of the garage. I really want to drive it, but it's so bad. Power steering's nice, I'll tell you that. Didn't do this before. Brakes work real good. Wow. Something in the tranny might be making noise, or that might be the collectors rattling. I'm not sure. It does go into gear and it does move. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Mad Ginger Customs. We've come a long way with the truck. We got to tune it a bit. The timing's obviously not where it needs to be. And I hear something I don't like, so we're going to have to kind of dig into that once we get some exhaust on it and I can actually hear everything. So we're going to do header gaskets because those things are garbage. We knew that when we installed them. And we're probably going to make an exhaust for it. Something I can remove in case I got to pull transmission out, but it does have forward gears. I don't know if it shifts. We got to get the nose situated back on it, lift the cab up, maybe do some cab mounts and stuff, but we're not going to do that anytime soon. Coffee shout outs. Wes Ott bought 5 coffees. We appreciate that. That's on our Buy Us Coffee link. That's in the description. Anything that you see that I've used in this video, I will have in the description and the Amazon links. If you click on those, you don't have to buy what's in the link. You can buy anything. And Amazon gives us just a tiny portion of it. You don't pay for it. So moving forward, we got a couple of review videos. If you want to support the channel, check out the review videos. I got a plasma cutter that'll cut 3/4 inch steel clean. That's what they said. With everything else, guys, we did a Crown Vic swap. We did a Chevy into a Ford swap. I know that makes a lot of you guys throw up your mouth. We did a lot of fabrication work. We C-notched it. You know, a lot of these things I've done for the first time ever. I've never done them before. And just remember, guys, if I can do it, you absolutely can do it. So thanks for watching.